In the audio commentary for The Muppet Christmas Carol, director Brian Henson mentions that one of the most popular moments with test audience kids was the little mice scene at the beginning. He was surprised since they were such a tiny part of the movie, with maybe 30 collective seconds of screen time. And yet, something about this adorable mouse family really leapt at audiences. Perhaps it's because of their unexpected popularity that these mice ended up starring in a TV special of their own a few years later. Mr. Willowby's Christmas Tree began life as a children's book by Robert Barry. Written in 1963, the book follows the titular tree's journey. A rich, eccentric man named Mr. Willowby has it delivered to his house, but finds that it's just a bit too tall. The tree's top section is lopped off and given to his upstairs maid. She has the same issue with the tree's size and takes a bit more off the top. The tree section, growing increasingly smaller, makes its way through the neighboring forest, with more animals taking parts of it, until the smallest piece ends up with a family of mice. Mice that happen to live right in Willowby's house. It's a charming story, and I can see why it looked promising. There were lots of opportunities with the different animals. What it was missing was a narrative drive and an actual conflict. That's where the Christmas Carol mice come in. The mice, who initially only appeared at the end of the Willowby story, become the main characters, following the tree on its journey, observing different Christmas traditions, and winding up with their own perfect tree in the end. So, how did this special turn out? Well, kind of weird. This one has remained under the radar since it first aired in 1995. It's, unfortunately, not a hidden gem, but it's not awful either. The strangest part to me is that for once, the human characters are more interesting and engaging than the Muppets. Front and center is Robert Downey Jr. as Mr. Willowby. I didn't just plaster him in the thumbnail for clickbait. I mean, that did play a factor, but he really stands out in this one. This is before he cleaned up his act, meaning that there's a good chance that RDJ was baked out of his mind in this one. Willowby is already an eccentric character, prancing around his house and spurting out a lot of nonsensical dialogue. But when you have 90s Downey in the role, you have to wonder how much of this is actually acting. It makes the special 10 times more interesting.
My tree, my humongous visitation of Christmas time. It's too tall. Baxter, what will we do?
What's up?
I see. You would carve a hole in the roof, huh? Oh, what a categorical impartation of absolute smartitude.
Yeah.
To contrast Willowby's manic behavior, his faithful butler, Baxter, is wonderfully played by Leslie Nielsen. Nielsen alternates between a serious deadpan and a general air of discomfort. It's subtle, and it's often very funny. We'd expect no less from him, of course. The maid, Adelaide, is played by Stockard Channing, who ends up being the weakest of the humans. This isn't really her fault, since she doesn't have much to work with outside of being homesick for Sweden. A romance blossoms between her and Baxter, but given the special short runtime, it doesn't get to develop much. That feeling of underdevelopment extends to the mouse family. We follow the father, sister, and brother who go out to find the perfect tree, but we never really get to know them all that well. Again, a lot of that can be chalked up to the special only being 22 minutes long. We do learn that Papa Mouse has something of an ego. No matter what spills they find themselves in, he insists it's all going according to plan. The other animals who partake in the festivities are some bears and owls. The bears half dance, half lumber around their cave holding honeypots. It's more weird than whimsical. On the other hand, the owls wordlessly singing in their icicle-filled tree is surprisingly haunting. The mice somehow survive this encounter, so maybe the owls ate beforehand. Kermit the Frog makes a welcome appearance as well, acting as the narrator. He had done the same thing in several specials when Jim Henson was still alive, most notably Emmett Otter's Jug Band Christmas. Although he doesn't really get to do all that much, it's always nice to see him. Unfortunately, this one ended up being kind of a misfire. As I said, there's only so much you can do in such a short runtime, especially when introducing an entire cast of new characters. Most other one-shot Muppet specials had twice the runtime, and could really work on making us root for newcomers, like Emmett Otter or Bean Bunny. There's nothing wrong with the animal characters, but it's such a weird feeling to watch a Muppet special and want to follow the humans instead. I was much more interested in Mr. Willowby playing Cupid for his servants. I'm as surprised as you are. On the flip side, it's a very thin plot, so trying to make this into an hour-long special probably would have presented its own challenges. The thing is, most of the people involved are very talented, and I'm not just talking about the human actors. The director, John Stone, did countless projects and sketches for Sesame Street, including classics like Don't Eat the Pictures and Christmas Eve on Sesame Street. The writer, Mitchell Kriegman, was the creator of Clarissa Explains It All, and would go on to create Bear in the Big Blue House and The Book of Pooh. The main puppeteers, Julian Busher, Kevin Clash, and David Rudman, have always been great performers. Sometimes, for whatever reason, things don't quite come together, even with a winning team. It's a Muppet misfire, alright, but it's worth at least one watch if you haven't seen it. If nothing else, Robert Downey Jr. delivers a distinct performance. It's also nice to see the Mouse family again, even if they don't end up leaving the biggest impression.
Must know